It's showtime, folks. Let's do this. How you doing out there? Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I am Lee Camp. I apologize if you were expecting some Eleanor Goldfield. I always think things are better with some Eleanor Goldfield in our lives, but she couldn't make it today. But she will be back next week, and I apologize. If you aren't getting enough Eleanor in your life, check out her other two podcasts, Project Censored and Radical Nuance. But let's get into it. It seems like every week we have new revelations about like the exact details of the crimes perpetrated by Israel. We may know a lot of things, but you get more and more details here and there, and we have new details on the use of mass human shields by Israel, of sexual crimes by Israel, and those have been coming out this week. So we're going to be getting into that. The protests continue over Mahmoud Khalil. I'm going to be talking about that, talking about some other criminality out of the Trump administration. Brand new episode of Unredacted tonight just dropped, as the kids say. By kids, I mean 35-year-olds. Just dropped last night. So if you missed that, I'm going to play a little clip of it, but a little later. But please do check that out. Unredacted tonight, every Thursday. But okay, let's get into it. I'm actually going to start on this story, though, about the Hamas negotiator that the U.S. was using, a man named Adam Bowler, United States envoy for hostages. And it was kind of going around Israel because it was discussions between the U.S. and Hamas for further ceasefire. And it seemed, as you'll see here, that he was saying he was hopeful that they were about to achieve release of all the captives and ongoing ceasefire that may be reached within weeks. So that's where things stood until he made the epic error. Oh, don't forget to click thumbs up, everybody. And I don't frown upon super chats. I do not frown upon them. That's what was going on until he made the horrible decision to call the Hamas, the Hamas people he was speaking with, not terrible guys. And that is unforgivable. Here he is on CNN.
Understand why Netanyahu, Dermer, others might be upset.
I do understand. I spoke with Ron, and I'm sympathetic. He has someone that he doesn't know well, making direct contact with Hamas. Maybe I would see them and say, look, they don't have horns growing out of their head. They're actually guys like us. They're pretty nice guys. So he doesn't know me, and there are big stakes. He lives in a country where if it sets certain precedents, then it will hurt or help a lot of other people. So I understand the consternation and the concern, and I wasn't upset. At the same time, we're the United States. We're not an agent of Israel. We have specific interests at play.
Maybe the other problem was he said that we're not an agent of Israel. We actually have our own foreign policy outside of Israel. We don't really. Israel's foreign policy is our foreign policy largely. But that's what he said. Thank you, Teresa, for supporting the show. It really does mean a lot. Love you, Teresa. You rock. But I think the thing that more likely got him booted, like immediately after this interview, was that he said that the Hamas men he was speaking with were nice guys.
Say, look, they don't have horns growing out of their head. They're actually guys like us. They're pretty nice guys.
They're guys like us. They're pretty nice guys. And fired. And gone. You cannot say that the people you're speaking to are okay, that they're human, that they don't have horns growing out of their heads. No, you cannot. And by the way, folks, I know some of you can see the number of people viewing is even far lower this today than my normal epic suppression on this channel. But that would be because Israel's in the title. Israel's in the title. Human Shields is kind of in the title. And so therefore, it's basically, do I want to cover the reality of this genocide, or do I want to ignore it because it's better for clicks? And sorry, I just keep covering it because that seems to be the right thing to do. So, yeah, that's why the numbers are terrible, even worse today than normal. Thank you, Kat, for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. So, Mr. Bowler was Adam Bowler was booted for daring to say that these other people are human. And that clearly is how to get diplomacy done, is just get rid of anybody who doesn't say these people aren't the devil. Then you're just screwed. And yeah, they got rid of him soon after that interview. Okay. I want to get to an admission, and we're going to get to a major UN report that also just came out. But I want to get to an admission from an Israeli soldier about the use of human shields. And if you only kind of tangentially follow the story, only tangentially follow the behavior of Israel, what they be doing, then you hear the term human shield and you go, oh, Hamas. Hamas uses human shields, right? That is what Israel always accuses Hamas of. They love a human shield. Oh, do they love a human shield? They, even when they're not at war, they just walk around with a human shield. It's just like a style. It's like a clothing style for them. Oh, they love a human shield. That is Israel's propaganda. They're pumping it out 24/7. The truth is, there's very little to none evidence of Hamas militants using human shields. However, there is loads of evidence, including photos and videos of Israel using human shields. Israel literally strapping Palestinians onto the front of their Jeeps and their trucks and their tanks, innocent Palestinians, because they think they're less likely to get bombed or shot if they have an innocent Palestinian strapped to their vehicle. But here is an admission from an Israeli soldier who has been taking part in this genocide. Like, this is a guy who's in it. This is not a former IDF soldier who, the moment after October 7th said, I ain't taking part in a genocide. No, this is a war criminal, a member of the genocide. But even this was a little too much for him, I guess, because he decided to relay what he saw. This is coming from an article in Haaretz, a well-known Israeli newspaper. And, I have to show you this post by Dropside News instead, because the Haaretz article is in Hebrew. So I'll just show this. So here's an excerpt from the article. Current IDF soldier. I saw that 6 investigations were opened by the military police, MP, regarding the use of Palestinians as human shields. And I almost choked. I've seen cover-ups in my life, but this is a new low. In Gaza, human shields are used at least 6 times a day. So he's laughing at the fact that there's only 6 investigations into the use of human shields. He's like, no, this is the norm. He says 6 times a day. If the MP, military police, wants to do its job seriously, they should open at least 2,190 investigations. But the MP just wants to pretend to the world that we're investigating ourselves, so they find a few scapegoats and pin everything on them. Chances are the scapegoats were soldiers that they were somehow looking to go after anyway. They somehow made their superiors angry, and so why not scapegoat them with this human shield stuff? The IDF soldier says, I was in Gaza for 9 months. I saw many new procedures. One of the worst was called mosquito procedure. Innocent Palestinians were forced to enter homes in Gaza and, quote unquote, clear them, meaning checking for militants or explosives. So this is still another form of human shields. It's not strapping them to the tank. What it is you take an innocent Palestinian and you send them into a home to see if it's booby trapped, see if a bomb goes off, see if something happens to them when they walk in there. Keep in mind, they have done nothing wrong. This isn't some kind of punishment to them. This is simply the fact that they are Palestinian. So they are sent into these houses to see if they die. And if they don't die, then the IDF decides the house is clear for them to go into. So this is absolutely the dictionary definition of human shields. The IDF soldier says we gave it various names: mosquito procedure, shawish, which means slaves, or platforms. I first encountered this in December 2023, 2 months into the ground maneuver. This was This was long before the shortage of sting dogs became the insane and unofficial excuse for this insane and unofficial procedure. I didn't understand back then how common it would become. Today, almost every company holds shawish, meaning they have slaves. And infantry forces don't enter a house before the shawish clears it. This means there are 4 shawish in a platoon, 12 in a battalion, 36 in a brigade. So every single platoon has these innocent Palestinian slaves that they send into homes to hopefully the bombs will blow them up instead of blowing up someone in the IDF. He says 36 in a brigade at least. We're holding a layer of slaves, and the MP is trying to cover it up with 6 investigations. So that's an admission from a current IDF soldier. This is not like, because we see these photos of human shields. We see videos here and there of a Palestinian strapped to a IDF Jeep or something. And a lot of people assume that these are like exceptions, that these are the rogue IDF soldiers that are doing something disgusting. Not that they aren't all doing something disgusting about being part of a genocide, but that this is a rogue activity. Instead, this is actually a like by the book. This is every platoon has these slaves that they send in to die in their place, and this is what's going on in Gaza on a daily basis, according to IDF soldiers, according to Haaretz, one of the most respected newspapers in Israel. Now, it can only be so respected because it's still pro-Israel, but of the pro-Israel propaganda rags, it's slightly better. Here's the difference between Haaretz and the other propaganda rags in Israel. Haaretz, right after October 7th, when Gray Zone and other independent outlets were doing reporting on the mass Hannibal directive, on the fact that the IDF killed hundreds of Israelis on October 7th, Haaretz put out an article calling all of those independent news organizations conspiracy theorists and liars. But months later, it admitted that the Hannibal directive definitely was used October 7th, and the IDF killed a lot of Israelis. So they turned around eventually. That's the difference between them and other garbage outlets. But so that revelation is coming out. The not just the use of human shields, but the mass use of human shields by the IDF. Yes, everybody hit thumbs up. Please support the show as I fight the censorship on a daily basis and try and bring you this information, no matter how incredibly suppressed it becomes. But also, there is a 49-page, I believe, UN report just came out yesterday. And let me tell you, it says great things about Israel. The headline is "More Than a Human Can Bear: Israel's Systematic Use of Sexual, Reproductive, and Other Forms of Gender-Based Violence Since October 2023." This is a UN report. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not somebody's blog. This is a UN report. And this is yet, like with human shields, what is one of the number one claims that Israel makes against Hamas? Sexual crimes, right? Systemic. I guess I have to say R word, or YouTube will like delete my video. They're already not showing it to anyone, but at least, but if I say R word, maybe they won't delete it. It is amazing how much YouTube is making sure we don't discuss real shit, not just Israel, but R wording, various forms of self-harm that I can't say, you can't talk about. You can't talk about the ATSEs that starts with an N. So basically, YouTube has created a real void for far right wing, like war crimes, hate crimes, sex crimes, to just be allowed to go on without any discussion. Like, you can't tell people not to do those things. Hey, here's an idea, folks. Don't be an ATSE starting with an N, because you can't say that on YouTube because they won't let you talk about ATSEs. Okay. And you'll see, I've noticed, like, the big channels, they have more sophisticated ways of going around this. Like they'll say it, but because their stuff is edited and not a live stream, it gets bleeped out or something. Or they have instead of saying PORN, they'd say prawn. Like there's a lot of things that the big channels know how to do to avoid saying anything of substance. Okay. Here's from this UN report. Israel has increasingly employed sexual, reproductive, and other forms of gender-based violence against Palestinians as part of a broader effort to undermine their right to self-determination and carried out genocidal acts through the systematic destruction of sexual and reproductive healthcare facilities, according to a new report issued today by the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory. I love that name. Their business card must look like a pool cover, you know? They must have to like carry it around with them with like 3 people at the back lifting up the end of the business card. The report documents a broad range of violations perpetrated against Palestinian women, men, girls, and boys. That sounds like all of the things, does it not? They could have just said against people across the occupied Palestinian territory since October 7th that constitutes a major element in the ill treatment of Palestinians and are part of the unlawful occupation and persecution of Palestinians as a group. The evidence collected by the commission reveals a deplorable increase in sexual and gender-based violence. Oh, you mean the thing Israel accuses Hamas of every time you hear a word out of their mouths and is then just faithfully repeated by all of our mainstream media? Oh, you mean that thing is what Israel's doing? Huh, that's funny, because I hear a lot about how Hamas is doing it. It's for some reason our mainstream media doesn't mention UN reports saying that Israel is doing it. There is no escape from the conclusion that Israel has employed sexual and gender-based violence against Palestinians to terrorize them and perpetuate a system of oppression that undermines their right to self-determination. The report found that sexual and gender-based violence, which has risen in frequency and severity, is being perpetrated across the occupied Palestinian territory as a strategy of war. Oh, it's a strategy. It's not just a rogue guy here or there. A strategy of war for Israel to dominate and destroy the Palestinian people. Specific forms of sexual and gender-based violence, such as forced public stripping and nudity, sexual harassment, including threats of R-word, as well as sexual assault, comprise part of the Israeli security forces' standard operating procedures towards Palestinians. Standard operating procedures. Not an accident, not a whoopsie, we have that rogue guy who's really awful human being. This is their plan. It's their strategy. And meanwhile, this is being largely funded and facilitated by the United States. We are the sugar daddy that allows this to go on. And, it just shows, so many things, but it also shows what garbage our mainstream media is. If they can't cover this, then what good are they? But meanwhile, they've covered, repeatedly covered utterly debunked stories of Hamas sexual assault on October 7th. So yeah, this is a pretty major report, 49 some pages, detailing Israel's use of sexual violence. So let's keep going. I want to get to a little more on Mahmoud Khalil. I covered the story more in depth 2 days ago. But this, and by the way, for those who don't know, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern is the new live stream time in the middle of the week. So Wednesdays 8 p.m. Eastern. The other 2 live streams, Monday and Friday, will remain at 3 p.m. Eastern. But so I covered his case more in depth the other day, but I want to show a little video about him and his past. He continues, as you know, he's been detained. They say they're going to deport him. He's being held in Louisiana, I think, given some access to lawyers. It's unclear how much, but and this is a rare case where the U.S. government under Trump, because Trump says the quiet part loud, so you get to know what you're actually up against. This is one of the rare cases where the U.S. administration says we arrested him and are deporting him not because he's committed any crime, just because national security. Because he was one of the leaders of the Colombia pro-Palestine anti protest at Colombia. Anyway, this is a minute and a half or so put together by Breakthrough News. Breakthrough News does great work. I had a short-lived show with them, not because we didn't enjoy working together. They're wonderful. It's just the timing didn't work out. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and play this clip. I don't know if it's, I don't know if Breakthrough has it copyright protected, so maybe this video will get taken down anyway. But
I was born and raised in a Palestinian refugee camp in southern Damascus in Syria. My family's history in Palestine actually goes back to as long as my grandparent could trace it. They lived in a very small village right next to Tiberias. Mostly they were farmers. My grandmother, she used to tell us that she had Jewish neighbors. They would share a piece of land where they would farm it. Tiberias was one of the first cities that the Zionists targeted in 1948 with ethnic cleansing. In April 1948, a month before the Nakba, the Zionist militias, they burnt one of their villages. When they heard the news,
I think most of you know what the Nakba is, but it was when the state of Israel was founded in 1947, 48. It was, they went around and just annihilated, kicked out, ethnically cleansed large swaths of the region. And there were 700,000 refugees during the Nakba, as well as the numbers vary a lot, but definitely thousands of just straight up executions and murders perpetrated by the brand new state of Israel.
April 1948, a month before the Nakba, the Zionist militias, they burnt one of their villages. When they heard the news about it, they had to leave immediately. Some of the men went to fight. Big families, they had to go to Syria. My grandmother, she was pregnant at that time. She had to walk 40 miles. She gave birth on the way. When they arrived in the refugee camp, they thought it's just a matter of days until they would go back. They did not want to be killed because they heard about the horror stories across Tiberias. My dad was born in a tent. His family lived in that tent until like mid-70s when they upgraded to small structures. In the 90s, they finally kind of like had concrete buildings. To us, it was always a temporary home until we go back to Palestine.
So that's the end of the clip. I'm not cutting it off early. But that is a documentary put together by Breakthrough News called The Encampments, but I think it's not out yet, but keep an eye out for that. They do great work over there. But yeah, that's the story of Mahmoud Khalil and his family getting kicked out of their homeland and living in tents for years just to survive. And then, you know, I imagine the view of his family, he gets lucky. He gets this maybe a scholarship or at least admission to Columbia University. And he's a grad student there when the October 7th happens. And if this were your life story, if you had his life story and you found yourself at Columbia University and you found that you were watching on the news as October 7th and everything after it unfolds and the genocide begins, would you sit there in your room and go, I just need to study, I'm not really going to do anything else? Or would you do like he did and say, we need to protest this and go out in the quad or whatever they call it and get furious, even though almost all of it was peaceful protesting. And the times where it did get violent, it was essentially every time perpetrated by violent anti-protesters coming and attacking them. And generally when people are attacked, they tend to defend themselves. And some of the anti-protesters were the cops. So Columbia called in the cops and, arrested some of the students, etc. It had been the last time they'd called in the NYPD to arrest students at Columbia was 1968 during the Vietnam War. And anyway, Mahmoud Khalil was one of the organizers of the Columbia protest, and now they have him in prison, and they want to deport him, and they have not accused him of a crime. They just say it's for national security reasons. Luckily, there are protesters against his confinement around this country. Here is NBC News reporting on nearly 100 protesters arrested after a sit-in at the Trump Tower in New York City to demand the release of Mahmoud Khalil. And of course, a lot of these protests, especially ones that are at Trump Tower or at Tesla dealerships, Trump is trying to make it legal for the government to arrest protesters, even nonviolent ones who are just blocking entrances, blocking business as usual. And that is, it's one of the telltale signs of fascism, right? And Trump is not the first, right? We saw brutal attacks on nonviolent Black Lives Matter protesters. I saw them outside the White House when Black Lives Matter was ongoing. And, Black Lives Matter started under Obama. And I saw brutal attacks by the fascist police on Occupy protesters. And, I was one of them. Luckily, I never got, I got some definite tear gassing, but never got arrested with with Occupy, just because I knew which direction to run when the cops started closing in. Really, that's the only reason. Thank you for Philip for donating a membership to the YouTube account. Thank you for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. Again, I just need to reiterate, I don't frown upon super chats. There's no frowning coming from this side of things. But yeah, there are large-scale protests going on to get Mahmoud Khalil freed. 100 protesters, Trump Tower, the organization. Oh, it's Jewish Voice for Peace. I didn't even notice that. Jewish Voice for Peace, an organization that I also am a part of. They were there protesting. Jewish Voice for Peace does great work. They are mostly Jewish people against the genocide, but they are not entirely just Jewish people. So non-Jews can be a part of Jewish Voice for Peace. Anyway, protests around that are ongoing. Okay, this next story, tangentially related, but it is a little more entertaining rather than gut-wrenching. My friends, the Voids, Julian Casablancas, his newer band. I mean, they've been around for years, but his newer band since the Strokes, called the Voids. It's more political than the Strokes. And my good buddy Julian went on the Late Show, Colbert Report's Late Show. Thank you, Nicole, for donating. And I can't show you the video. I'll show you a still from the video. I can't show you the video because with music, YouTube is the worst. Like, you play 1 second and they will take it down. Anyway, they went on whatever Colbert show is called, Late Night with Colbert or whatever. I don't even know the names anymore. But they have a line in their new song. The song's called Blue Demon. It's by the Voids. And I'm going to read you the lyrics, and you try and guess which word Colbert's show censored as they were singing. The lyrics are and you do not want me to try and even remotely sing this tune because I would break computer screens across the globe. So I will read it. Ride 'em, cowboy. Are we there yet? Let me take you to the after parties over. Time for battle. I'm from the future. More will follow. Supercomputer. Our Lord and Savior, like a brother, different mother. My manifesto, intifada. On the front line, we help each other. Which word do you think flipped out the Late Show? So they performed this, and that's in the chorus. So they had to do it 3 separate times, where right when they get to the word intifada, when Julian says the word intifada, they dip the audio. They act like it's not a censor. Like, they act like, whoa, who knows? The intifada word just happened to I don't just dipped out. Why? What the who? Somebody keeps sitting on the control panel. So they had to dip the audio at the word intifada 3 separate times, I think, during this song, which is it's so pathetic and childish. The word intifada means like resistance or uprising. It does not mean, blow up your neighbor or something. So basically this is white America going, ooh, scary word, scary Arab word. What do we do? Let's just dip the audio. And of course, they didn't tell Julian or anyone they were going to do this. None of it was passed by them. It's just, we're going to allow you to perform, but we're going to dip the audio on the word we find scary. Like, that's the censorship that's going on our television network. Can't say the word uprising. That's too horrifying. All right, I'm going to show a little clip, like a 2-minute clip of Unredacted Night, episode 4. I know many of you probably saw it last night, so I'm not going to show much of it. But for those who haven't seen it, I want you to take a look at it and see if it's something you might want to go check out. Look, if there's any reason for me to have my own live stream 3 times a week, it is to mercilessly promote my own shit. But yeah, I'm just gonna play a couple of minutes, and for those who haven't checked out the show, hopefully you will consider doing so. And I'll also, it's at linktree.com/Lee Camp, but I'll also put it in the chat. Coming up on tonight's show, the secret mechanism that allows massive corporations to run roughshod over our democracy. What the hell's a shod? And how prison labor became the glue holding our fractured country together. And it's not even good glue. It's like using Elmer's to build a skyscraper. Plus, we'll talk to the possible next governor of California about why government should live on your couch and have veto power over who you bring home to do the naked lambada with. Naked tango? Naked Macarena. Yes. All that and more. Let's do it. January in the year 2000, Bolivians pour out into the streets of Cochabamba in furious protest. The chorizo was spicy that day, my friends. Why were they so angry? Their water had broken. And I don't mean they gave birth, because that would have been awkward for thousands of people at once. Just don't make eye contact. No, their water had been stolen by some of the richest people in the world. Cochabamba's public water company, CEMAPA, Municipal Water and Sewage Service, was sold to the only bidder, Bechtel-owned Aguas del Tunare, which was also my Lucha Libre name. Okay, I'm going to stop it there because I know many of you already saw it, but it is at Linktree. It's obviously on this YouTube channel that many of you are watching this right now, but I just give the Linktree because I don't want to bother with all the different links. But yes, youtube.com/@RealLeeCamp. And it comes out every Thursday. And I'd love for you guys to support the show. Check it out. Click thumbs up. Leave a comment. That always helps the algorithm. If you just comment the hell out of it, go for it. Just throw in just stream of consciousness stuff. And it helps. So I hope you'll check it out. So that was the opening segment about the corporate takeover of the globe that most people don't know about. And then the next segment is about prison labor. I have an incredibly awkward interview with the Republican candidate for governor of California, Brandon Jones, where I decided to pretend I was more right-wing than him on many issues and see how that went. And it was fascinating. It was fascinating. By the way, I only showed 2 minutes of that in the unredacted episode. If you want the full 18 minutes of me awkwardly trolling Brandon Jones, then become a member at patreon.com/LeeCamp or at LeeCamp.net, my locals page. And there's some lovely moments in there. Maybe on a future live stream, I'll bring you a moment or two from my kind of bizarre interview with Brandon Jones. So yeah, that's the new show. Hope you guys keep supporting it because I will keep doing it as long as it is conceivably possible for me to keep doing it. Okay. This relates to our last topic we were just covering. The DOJ is deploying anti-Semitism task forces to 4 U.S. cities as part of crackdown on pro-Palestine protests. The U.S. Department of Justice said Thursday that its recently created federal task force to combat anti-Semitism will be heading to 4 U.S. cities as part of the Trump administration's broad crackdown on college protests critical of Israel. The DOJ said the task force, led by attorney Leo Terrell, will be visiting the leadership of New York, Boston, Chicago, and Los Angeles to discuss their responses to incidents of anti-Semitism at schools. And I'll just remind you, everyone, that actual reports of anti-Semitism are rather rare. They've become, they've become a little more common since Israel started committing genocide on a daily basis. But literal anti-Semitism, like the real thing, not the thing Israel claims every 2 minutes, if you actually just look in their direction, the real thing, the real anti-Semitism, rather rare in America. And yet they are using that term, anti-Semitism, to attack and arrest anyone who dare criticize or go after Israel for their policies of genocide and ethnic cleansing, etc. While the pro-Palestine protests swept college campuses have been labeled anti-Semitic, many Jewish students and organizations have participated. The DOJ said that Terrell informed city leaders that he was aware of allegations that the schools in their respective cities may have failed to protect Jewish students from unlawful discrimination, such as protesting Israel. It's funny. I thought it was actually legal to protest in this country. I thought that was kind of like one of the things that was supposed to be okay. No? Is that not? Are we not doing that anymore? Anyway, Trump's crackdown on protests continues. And again, this is one of the telltale signs of fascism, is even moderate protest is not allowed. Let's move to Trump's crackdown on climate protesters. We'll go from one to another. Trump's FBI moves to criminally charge major climate groups because apparently protesting the climate, protesting the behavior, the policies that are causing climate crisis should be illegal. The FBI is moving to criminalize groups like Habitat for Humanity for receiving grants from the EPA under the Biden administration. Citibank revealed in a court filing Wednesday that it was told to freeze the group's bank accounts at the FBI's request. Habitat for Humanity. Now, there's some criticism of Habitat for Humanity, like, certain times they have not built the best homes or things like that. Those criticisms are not that they're that I've ever seen, or not that they're committing fraud for climate protest. The reason that FBI said to freeze their bank accounts was the FBI alleges the group are involved in possible criminal violations, including conspiracy to defraud the United States. The FBI has told Citibank that recipients of EPA climate grants are being considered as potentially liable for fraud. That is, the Trump administration wants to criminalize work on climate science and impacts, and they have shut down a lot of climate science that was ongoing. An incoming administration not only cancels federal grants. Oh, sorry, this is some tweets. The incoming administration not only cancels federal grants, but declares recipients as criminals. All these grantees applied under government calls for environmental work were reviewed and accepted. Trump wants to jail them. Even if it has nothing to do. Thank you, Philip, for supporting the show. Even if this had nothing to do with climate change, climate crisis, the idea of like you apply for a federal grant, you get it, and then the next president says by getting that grant, you're guilty of fraud is kind of amazing. Philip says the political meaning of intifada in Arabic, same as the political meaning of don't tread on me in the 70s and 80s. Oh, is the same as the don't tread on me. Palestinians agree with Americans on opposition to being bullied by empires. Thank you, Philip. Good point. But yeah, they are. The Trump administration is going after any kind of like even small level work to stop climate crisis. The tiniest of things, because it's kind of funny because how much has Habitat for Humanity actually stopped our government from moving forward on our policies that are just absolutely eating this planet alive and shitting it out? Zero, maybe less than zero. Habitat for Humanity has not stopped climate crisis, okay? At all. It might have built some houses for people who were flooded out by climate crisis, but so the idea that the Trump administration wants to believe like we need to stop I mean, you got to remember what's at the heart of this. And like deep down, I like to get to those core level understandings of these things. Yes, the Republicans say climate change isn't happening because they don't believe in 99.7% of all peer-reviewed scientific studies of literally hundreds of thousands of scientists. As many have said, climate science is now globally probably one of the most studied things the world has ever known. Now, part of that has to do with the fact that until 50 years ago, you weren't trading information internationally that easily. But it is like one of the most studied things ever by our modern level of advanced scientists. And 99.7% say it's happening. So yeah, you've got that kind of understanding that Republicans want to say it's not happening. So anything that would even pretend to acknowledge that it's happening is bad for their policies because it doesn't look good for their government that where they say climate change is happening, to have scientists studying how climate change is happening. But what's below that? Why is it that it is so dangerous for the current status quo of ruling elite to acknowledge that climate change is happening? Well, I'd say the two biggest ones are it reveals that capitalism will destroy this planet. I mean, market economics. The idea that you can just make a lot of money by knocking down a forest. If someone owns a forest, cut it all down, sell the wood, make a shit ton of money, maybe millions and millions of dollars, depending on the size of the forest. What does that do for the future? It destroys a whole swath of the world. That becomes unlivable. Endangered species die. Animals have nowhere to go. There's nothing to grow food. Like, it is utterly devastating to our future, but that's not how our market system works, right? Our market system works, how much money can you get right now? So knocking down forests is great for getting money right now. So climate crisis admits, just acknowledging it, admits that we are destroying our ability to sustain on this planet. So they have to get rid of it for that reason. I mean, to wipe it off, act like it's not happening. Another reason, probably equally important, and it still has to do with economics, but is the petrodollar. Is that the U.S., our money is based on petroleum, based on fossil fuel sales and usage. And so if countries around the world and people around the world switch away from fossil fuels, that is devastating to the U.S. dollar. And we're seeing it happening. Used to be that 60% of the global reserve currency was in the US dollar. I think it's down to like 40-something%. So that's decreasing because multiple reasons, but one of the biggest ones is petroleum. We're switching away from petroleum. Petrodollar is becoming less important. There's many countries that used to buy and sell oil in dollars, and now they aren't. So that also is harming the petrodollar. And at the heart of this, one of the big reasons, part of it's for the way the U.S. behaves, the way we just destroy countries, that's having an impact. But part of it is because a lot of these countries are moving away from, or at least attempting to move away from, at least they have the idea of moving away from endless fossil fuel usage. And if you admit climate crisis is happening, then the only rational thing to do is immediately move off of fossil fuels. And so they have to shred the entire idea that it's even a thing, like that it even exists. And so they're trying to get rid of organizations that just have grants connected to climate. And of course, they're also shredding the EPA but as I've said, the EPA, was limp dick at best. They hadn't, there's like 1,000 chemicals they hadn't added to their toxic chemical list, because the last time they updated their toxic chemical list was like 20 years ago or 30 years ago or something. So as all these new regularly used chemicals come into play, the EPA just hadn't added it. Was like, no, what are you talking about? That's not dangerous. And even that limp dick EPA is too much for Donald Trump, so he wants to shred it even more. Anyway, that's an interesting development in the Trump administration. Another interesting development is their impending setting fire to the Department of Education. Democratic attorneys general across the country, 20 of them, so 20 different states, are suing Trump over the gutting of the education department. A group of Democratic attorneys general filed a lawsuit on Thursday to block significant cuts to the Department of Education made by Trump, led by the New York Attorney General, Letitia James. The coalition of more than 20 states filed suit in federal court after the agency cut about half of its workforce. More than 1,300 employees were laid off in a single day, the latest move toward Donald Trump's goal of dismantling the department entirely. And this has been an aim of Republicans and right-wingers for a while now. Remember back, there was a famous debate moment when Rick Perry, the former governor of Texas, said, the moment I become president, I'm going to get rid of 3 departments. And he couldn't remember all the departments he wanted. He listed one of them, and then he said, and it was just about the end of his. Those were simpler times. It was the end of his presidential run, because he looked so dumb. I want to erase 3 departments of the federal government. I don't know what they are. Yeah, that doesn't play well. You need to kind of know. But one of them that he supposedly wanted to get rid of was the Department of Education. And this is because educating the Department of Education largely helps the poorer students. Public education helps the poorer students. I went to public schools and I grew up middle class, but if you grow up upper class, and many people grow up middle class, they're not going to the public schools. It depends on what state, what area of the country. But so public schools and the Department of Education, the people they help the most are going to be poorer and middle class Americans. Educating poorer and middle class Americans does not benefit the rich. In fact, it creates competition for the rich. It also, sometimes those poorer people can end up becoming smart and leading things like revolutions and leading people to do bad things, like realize that the actual enemy of love and sustainability and peace and the environment is the rich and the oligarchy, rather than your brothers and sisters and fellow workers. And if you realize that kind of thing, that's very bad for them. So they don't really want you educated. I mean, and they've done a good job of kind of gutting these things without actively getting rid of the Department of Education. Like 21% of Americans are functionally illiterate, meaning they can text the eggplant emoji to their friends, but they couldn't read a paragraph out of a book. So, functionally illiterate is different than fully illiterate, but 21%, nearly a quarter of this country couldn't read a book. And why is it like, why would the richest country in the world allow us to get to that point? Because an educated populace under capitalism is a bad thing. An educated ruling elite might be a good thing. Educated Wall Street for them might be a good thing. But an educated general populace, especially the bottom 50%, not really good. Not a good thing. So they've been aching to do this for a long time, and they've kind of partially done it without fully doing it. And who are the people that get hurt the most by gutting the Department of Education? It's going to be the poorest students, but it's also going to be those with disabilities. Is something the Department of Education is heavily involved in. It's going to be those who have experienced discrimination or sexual assault. It's going to be the non-white students tend to benefit more. So all of these things that Trump is shredding, the ones who are going to feel it the hardest are going to be the ones with the least in this country. Sounds great, doesn't it? Sociopath test. We need a fucking sociopath test. They don't pass the sociopath test. They can't walk into the Oval Office. They can't walk into Congress. They can't. Then that goes for the Elon Musk. It goes for the cabinet. It goes for the Pentagon. It goes all of them. Okay. I'm not saying you can't let them in the grocery store. They can go and hump the produce or whatever they do, but they just can't be in positions of leadership. Sociopath test. Who's coming with me? Telling you. I'm going to do, you watch, in the coming weeks, we're going to have an opening monologue of unredacted tonight about bringing in the sociopath test. It's going to happen, man. It's going to happen. Okay. Final story before I wrap up on this incredibly long week. Oh, I'm killing myself, guys. I'm killing myself. Trying to bring you unredacted tonight it's not easy. You want to know the massive crew we have working on unredacted tonight? I know you all love Gary. It's a whopping, let me see, if you add that person, it's like, hold on, wait, I forgot about, okay. It's 3 people. It's me, a video editor. Thank you, Reese, if you're listening. And a camera guy. And Gary, whose real name might be Chris, but I still yell at him. But I still am horrible to him. Okay, last story I wanted to get to is, and if you guys listen to Government Secrets, then you already heard me get to this, but I wanted to let everybody else know that they should check this out. There is a Netflix documentary that's just come out it's based on a book by Tom O'Neill called Chaos. And it's about the connections of Charlie Manson. Depends on how close you are with him. If you're not buddies with him, he was Charles Manson. If you were real, like toads cool with him, Charlie Manson. When did we start calling him Charlie Manson? It's like, you're like, oh, that mass murderer. He seems like more of a Charlie than a Charles. Oh, yeah, I used to, that's reminding me. In my early days of stand-up, I had a joke about how all the biggest serial killers, like, we have their middle name. John Wayne Gacy, and I can't remember some of the others. But I was like, what is it about middle names that means they're going to be killers? Okay, but anyway, it's an excellent documentary, but it is mind-blowing. And you could also go listen to the Government Secrets episode where I do a much longer segment on the connections. But here's the biggest part of it. I'll just give you the biggest part of it. Charles Manson, he's in prison, right? He then comes out of prison and he's on parole. When he has to keep checking in with the parole officer once a week, he's on parole. And during that time, that year he's on parole, he's living in San Francisco. He's a regular at, the Haight, down in the Haight area, Haight-Ashbury. And his parole officer's office is in the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic. And it's also where Charles Manson would come in with his gaggle of girls, underage girls that would follow him around like he was their guru, like he was their god. And they would follow him around and he'd bring them in there for all kinds of medical needs. Apparently prevalent was STD, STI issues, pregnancies, etc. And he was well known in this area. Like, you don't even in the weird times of hippie central, in drug, LSD central. Even in those weird times, people noticed Charles Manson walking around with 7 to 10 young girls following him like he was their god. So everyone knew him. It just so and by the way, he keeps violating his parole. They're always stealing. He's violating it endlessly, and they never lock him back up. Every time he does it, the parole officer's just like, cool, get back out there. Now, why would that be? But more importantly than that, the New York Times and other outlets have revealed the names of just like 8 or 9 of the biggest MK Ultra, Operation Chaos, CIA, psychiatrists and scientists who were in charge of the brain manipulation studies that the CIA and FBI were involved in the 60s. Horrific stuff where they would dose people with LSD and not tell them they were doing it, and had all other kinds of tricks, hypnosis, etc., to see what kind of brain control, what kind of mind control they could perpetrate on these people, whether they could get them to do things, whether they could get false memories implanted in their brain, all of these things. One of the main guys was a guy named Jolly West, nicknamed Jolly. Don't know why. Sounds horrific. Probably because he laughed that washing someone's brain was getting his jollies off. Anyway, Jolly West, that guy during that year is working out of that office, the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic office. Same year that Charles Manson's coming in every day. And they have not, like, so the researcher Tom O'Neill is not, he spent 20 years on this. And he does not have the like smoking guns, CIA papers saying we're working with Charles Manson. That doesn't exist, or at least doesn't yet. But what kind of coincidence is that? That the guy who has a level of mind control you rarely ever see. Like, you remember after he got these women to, there was a guy too, right? Or a couple of guys, Tex Watson. So after he got these people to go and murder people they'd never met and feel nothing while doing it. After he got all them to do that, after they're obviously, they sleeps with them constantly, drugs them constantly, gets them to do anything he wants. After all that, they're then arrested, or some of them arrested, put in prison. Do you remember the videos? The other ones are sitting outside the courtroom steps on the sidewalk on their knees, talking about how wonderful Charles Manson is and how we all should bow down to him and he's going to save us. Like, that's the level of brainwashing we're talking. A level that is rare, to say the least. He had that ability, Charles Manson somehow did, to create that. And he just so happens to have been in the same office as the lead brainwasher of the most horrific and powerful intelligence agency the world has ever seen. What are the odds? What are the odds? And of course, there's different. If you take the next step and say, okay, it's connected to CIA, there's different ways that could like manifest itself. It doesn't have to be that he was a CIA agent or something. It could be that they screwed him up with their techniques and then sent him out after that. It could be, I mean, from all accounts, he was pretty weird before he got out of prison the first time. But it could also be that they somehow gave him access to their methods to allow him to then brainwash others. There's a lot of possibilities as to what was their connection. He may have never known that the people he was talking to at the Haight-Ashbury Clinic were had any connection to CIA or anything. But anyway, Jolly West, by the way, that lunatic psychologist was also, he's dead now, but he was also the psychiatrist who went in to see Jack Ruby, the killer of Lee Harvey Oswald. He went in to see him weeks before he was going to testify to the Warren Commission. He goes in to see him and he comes out and he says, yeah, he's had a break with reality. He's just saying all kinds of crazy stuff that doesn't make any sense. So basically, Jack Ruby's in prison for a long time, like 2 years, I think, and before he dies. And he's never called insane before that. But this guy, Jolly West, spends a few hours with him, comes out. Oh, he's gone insane. I just spent a few hours with him. He went insane. And then, later when he's about to testify, when Jack Ruby's about to testify again, he suddenly is riddled with cancer that kills him in a matter of weeks after getting injections from a CIA-connected doctor. Huh. Interesting. A lot of interesting stuff going on. A lot of interesting stuff at the CIA those days. They were having fun. Say what you will about them. They were having a good time back then. All right, I'm going to wrap this show, but I hope you guys will check out Unredacted tonight. Don't forget, there's 4 episodes out already, so if you have missed any of them, you can go to the playlist and watch all 4. That's at the top of linktree.com/Lee Camp. Also, I just want to put in a pitch for my podcasts, which I don't really pitch enough. There's a bunch of them. There's Government Secrets, where I just covered the Charles Manson CIA thing. This show is a podcast called either Moment of Clarity if you're on Apple Podcasts, or the Lee Camp Show on Spotify. So check that out. And then there's the Just Comedy podcast, which is all my comedy stuff. But going forward, it's looking like it will become the Unredacted Tonight podcast. So it's still my comedy stuff, but my comedy stuff happens to be Unredacted Tonight. So if you are not able to watch the visual version, the video version of Unredacted Tonight, you can catch the podcast Just Comedy. And it would be amazing if you rate these things when you go listen to them. Click the rating, because it does make a big difference. Apple Podcasts and Spotify put a lot of weight on those ratings. So if you click the 4 stars, not 4 stars, 5 stars. Do not give me 4 stars, or I will hunt you down. And if you click the 5 stars, that'd be amazing. And I will see you. The new schedule is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but Wednesdays is at 8 p.m. Eastern. Monday and Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern. And of course, Unredacted Tonight. Okay, let me see. Just go to linktree.com/LeeCamp to get the latest episode of Unredacted Tonight. And that's all I got. Keep fighting.
Well, brother, I salute you, though, man. You're one of the few that bring together this tremendous artistic talent and still be in such deep solidarity with oppressed people.
It's an honor to be here, because I'll tell you, Lee, you have one of the funniest shows on television, bar none.
It's an enormous pleasure to be here. While I was waiting, I was leafing through your wonderful book.
The same to you. I love your show. Be happy to come back anytime.
Lee, this is one of the great honors of my long career, just to be in the same earth with you.
I'm sure.
We're just so blinded. We have so many blinders on because our society doesn't want us to know things. And so it takes shows like your show, and
it is clearly designed to eradicate.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, Jill, how are you? Julian, thanks for joining me. Honor to have you, brother.
Consumerism is a theory that people should behave this way to help each other. It's not.
Mr. George Galloway, thank you so much for joining me in these dark times.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much, Lee, for having me on. Keep fighting. Ha ha.